We're starting Be'ez Hashem Siman Nun Beis of Maamar Shevuos, and we're talking about the Rambam Shita that holds that there's a machlokes between the Chachamim if Eliyahu will come before Mashiach or after Mashiach. And the question was that the Gemara in Erevin Daf Mem Gimel says beferish that Eliyahu will come before Mashiach, and that's why the Gemara is matir a person who makes a neder to be a Nazir b'yom ben David ba to drink wine on Shabbos because Eliyahu can't come on Fridays. So Eliyahu has to come one day before Mashiach. So we know for sure that if Eliyahu didn't come yesterday, Mashiach's not going to come today. So if that's the case, then the question was, how did the Rambam say that there's a machlokes about it if the Gemara seems to be beferish that there's no machlokes? Now, we said in Nun Aleph that the Rambam l'shitasdoi, because he holds as a machlokes, the Rambam has a different shot in the whole reason why a Nazir is allowed to drink on Shabbos, and he has the whole shtickle because Safik Nazir is l'hakel, and because Mashiach maybe won't come on Shabbos because of Tchumen. The Rambam has his own shot in that whole thing. He goes against the whole Gemara in Erevin, and he says his own thing. So it shtims. The Rambam's l'shitasdoi. The problem is just where's the Rambam coming from? How does he get this other shita that Eliyahu could come after Mashiach? The Rambam l'shitasdoi ha'eloi ra'im in hashtas neged oisa sugya shehechrech shiyavu Eliyahu koydem. The Rambam, because he has a different shita somewhere else, he has a proof from the Gemara against the other Gemara in Erevin that Eliyahu will come before. And what's his proof? Shaharei hevi ra'im miben koziva. The Rambam in the beginning of in the Perek Aleph Hilchos Malachim Halacha Gimel, I think it's Halacha Gimel, he brings a proof from Ben Koziva that that Mashiach doesn't have to do any miracles, right? Even though it came out later, it was discovered later, that the whole Ben Koziva was a mistake. The it was a big mistake. It caused a great destruction. The Rambam held that you could bring a raya from the Havamina too. And why did they hold that he was Mashiach before? How did Rabbi Kiva and all his colleagues of that door, how did they all think that he was Mashiach? The heavy raya the Rambam means a raya from what they thought originally, what they originally thought. V'im Kain, if so, according to the Rambam, Yesh Misham Raya Gam Alzeh. We could bring another raya from Ben Koziva. Besides the raya about the miracles, we could bring a raya that Eliyahu doesn't have to come before. That the Rabbi Kiva and the others must have held that there's no definite thing that Eliyahu has to come before. Why Shahari Bevadai Loy Ba'a Az Eliyahu Levaster Shehi Agula? We know for sure Eliyahu didn't come then. Shahari Hayashekar, because it turned out to be a false geula. So in Kain Lafia Sugya the Maseches Erevin, according to the Gemara in Erevin, that holds that Eliyahu will for sure come before Mashiach. There was no way to even think that Ben Koziva could be Melech Mashiach. So from the fact that they thought that, Al Korchach, it must be that they held not like the Gemara.
Right, there's a total contradiction to the Gemara in Erevin that Eliyahu comes first.
Al Korchach the Pligi Alzeh. You see, it must be that they argue on this.
Don't we have a rule that the Bali always takes the Yerushalmi when it comes to Lefaikas?
The Bali always goes, and it takes precedence over the Yerushalmi. So here you have the Yerushalmi saying that Ben Koziva might have been Mashiach, and the Bavli is saying that Eliyahu has to come before. So you're right. The Yerushalmi should be nidcha. We should push away the Yerushalmi in favor of the Bavli. But in this case, I think he's going to say soon that even the Bavli says this Havamina that Ben Koziva could have been Mashiach. You're going to see, because there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Sadi Gimel that says that Ben Koziva said that he's Mashiach. So the Chacham tested him. Sadi Gimel and Beis. Sanhedrin Sadi Gimel and Beis. That Ben Koziva said, "Anahu Malka Mashiach. I am the Messiah. I am Mashiach." So the Chacham said, "Well, let's see if he is able to paskin based on his smell." And they tested him out, and he couldn't do it. So they killed him. It's the Lashon Gemara. Katluhu. They killed him. So I think that the Rebbe is going to say soon that this is the proof that the Rambam had that all the Chachmei Doirei thought that he was Melech HaMashiach. In other words, from the Yerushalmi story, you don't see that anybody besides Rabbi Kiva thought that. You see, Rabbi Kiva thought it, but nobody else thought it.
But they still tested him in the end. In the end, they tested him if he's legitimate or not.
Right. So, but in Sanhedrin, Bavli, you see that they tested him. So it sounds like until they tested him, they believed it. So that's what the Rambam meant. You know
what's funny? So, the New Testament regarding Yeshua itself says when the sages asked him to show sign that he's the Messiah, he would curse them out. I don't know why they admitted that he would refuse to show the sages any signs.
Okay. At least Ben Koziva tried, right?
Yeah, but he actually cursed the sages out. The New itself says so.
Okay, Omnam Kasha Lasso is Machlokes al Sugi b'Gemara. However, it's a shver zach. It's very hard to say this kind of an answer that there's a Machlokes against the Beferish Gemara and Eruvin based on the Havamina from Ben Koziva, because he says Kasha Lasso is Machlokes al Sugi b'Gemara shehechlita lahatir naziris b'Shabbos v'Yomtiv. The Gemara says b'vada. It's for sure true that Eliyahu has to come before, to the point that we're actually matir a guy to drink wine if he's a nazir based on this heter.
Yeah, you make a mice out of it, so how can you say there's nothing to it?
Right. Even if you hold that Safik Naziris goes lahachmir, still he's allowed to drink, because we have this vadai thing that Eliyahu can't come before. It's necessarily true that Eliyahu will come before. How can we slug that up, or that, whatever, create a machlokes on that at least, based on the Ben Koziva sugya? Shemasha dimu alav. This that they at first thought that he was Mashiach, lo yahaya ela havamina bi'alma, just a havamina. And umavur begemara bava basar daf kuf laman on the base, ein lemeidim halacha loy mipi lamud v'loy mipi ma'aseh, limud v'loy mipi ma'aseh. We don't learn halacha from something that the Rabbi said in the base medrash just for learning purposes, and not from a ma'aseh that we just heard a story that happened like this, but we didn't hear the reasons.
How do we learn halacha then?
Both together. Because each one has a chisaron. He says if the Rabbi says pshat in the Shiur a certain way, it might not be la halacha. And if there's a ma'aseh that happened a certain way, it might not be possible to derive halacha from it, because maybe there's a different reason that you don't know about that may have affected the psak. So therefore, you can never learn halacha until the Rav says actually halacha l'ma'aseh. Okay, so. The cost of Shomer Rashbam, loy mipi Gemara. You can't learn from a Gemara. He had a different girsa. Instead of limud, he had the word Gemara. So you can't learn from a Gemara, from a Shiur, in other words, from someone that the Rav, something the Rav is saying just for learning purposes. Sheim loy made harav v'yoymer mistaber time de Pliny. The Rav is giving a Shiur, and he says, I think that Pliny is more correct. Pliny chacham. Ein talmid of lameidim misham halacha. They can't just go and paskin like that based on that Shiur. Why? The Shema im yavo lidei ma'aseh, because perhaps if it will actually come to a situation where you have to apply the halacha, yidaktik yoiser, then the Rav will be more careful, and he'll be yira tam acher b'davar. He'll realize that the other chacham is right. V'im yira rabbi oisa ma'aseh, and the same thing the other way around. If you see the Rabbi posting in something l'ma'aseh on an actual story, al yikba halacha b'chach, you can't determine the halacha based on the story. The Shema Tov b'tam hapsak, because maybe he was mistaken about the reason. Maybe the Talmud, who's watching the story, doesn't realize what his Rabbi's true reason is. B'tam hapsak din shaloisa ma'aseh. Okay. So what he's going to say is based on that. So Ben Koziva was a story. So you don't know what the reason why they thought he was Mashiach and why they rejected it. They rejected it in the end. They rejected it based on the smelling test. But maybe they also rejected it based on the fact that Eliyahu didn't come first. You can't know for sure all the reasons why they rejected it.
Yeah, because I like to bring the mice, and these all aren't proofs.
I just want to mention Agav here. There's a famous thing all the Zionists say that you can't learn from the Shalosh Shevuos because it's Nagada Sugya.
Yeah, I heard that one. It's an old one. It's a very old one.
So the makor of this is not this Gemara in Bava Basra, because this Gemara says Limud and Ma'aseh. You can't learn from Limud and Ma'aseh. But take a look in Yerushalmi, Peah, Perak Sheni, Halacha Daled, and it's in page 3 of the Maamar sheets, and it's highlighted. It says Reb Zera b'shem Shmuel. Reb Zera said in the name of Shmuel, Ein lemeidim loy mina halachas v'loy mina hagadas. We can't derive halacha from from a halacha that's said in the base medrash, just as a shiur, and not from agadata. Oh, so this is the Zionist makor.
halachas too, it says, so they can't,
Right, but wait, you're going to see what it means in a second. You're going to see what it really means. Not from additional things. Ela mina Talmud, only from the Talmud, which is Talmud Bavli, the Gemara. Okay, and if you look down in the Pnei Moshe, he says, "Ein lemeidim halacha lemaisa davar min davar v'loy min halacha shehus kru bohen halacha." You can't learn from a place where it says in the Mishnah halacha kedivrei or meir or something. Halacha, maybe l'Moshe misinai. Ein lemeidim halacha zu. You can't learn from it. L'dama is l'davar acher, to compare it to a different situation. Kamoya v'loy mima shehus kru ba'agadas. You can't learn from an agadata. Meaning like the Medrash. He's talking about like Medrash Rabbah and Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, things like that. But not Toseftas, not from Toseftas, which means Tosefta, printed in the back of the Gemara. El minat Talmud, lefisha Amoraim shebet Talmud hein shebiru halach lemaisa. The Amoraim, Rabbi Rav Ashi, Rav and Abaya, when they wrote the Gemara, they were mevarer. They clarified and they came to a conclusion about what the halacha is. Mitoich pilpulam, with their give and take. Mitoich sfar shalahem. Even though sometimes the Mishnah says halacha k'Reb Ploini, halacha k'Reb Meir, halacha k'Reb Yehuda, ein soimchin al zeh. Kim davka halacha shebegemara. So basically, it's not saying that you can't rely on Agadata Gemara. It's saying that you can't rely on Medrash. You can't paskin halacha from a Medrash. That's what it's saying.
What about the Sefer and Sefri?
Same thing. It's also a Medrash. It's not the Gemara. Only the Gemara is our source of halacha.
Because at times even Rav Moshe brings down halachas from the Sefer and Sefri.
Okay, well it could be that he brought a rise to something from there, but the final psak can't be brought from there. You can't say, okay, it says halacha k'Reb Meir in the Sefri, so we pass it.
But the Gemara says, let's say halacha k'Reb Yehuda. The Gemara, the Bavli itself has so.
The Bavli itself, right? Okay. So that's the answer to the Tziyonim. The Tziyonim say that you can't paskin from Agadata. Well, Agadata means Medrash, doesn't mean Gemara. Anything that's in the Gemara is not Agadata. It's for this purpose. It's not called Agadata. It's called halacha.
Believe me, these stories were not written for the Tziyonim think.
Stories weren't written just. You mean?
According to them, written just for fun.
Okay, so let's go weiter now in the Vayoel Moshe. Gam hevi sham acharkach. The Rashbam brings Masha Amru ein lameidim halachim mipi Mishnah. This is what I just showed you in the Yerushalmi. I think we don't learn halacha from a Mishnah. B'mkoyim shekaspu Mishnah halacha kedvarav. When the Mishnah says that the halacha is like a certain Tana, imlav the pasuk b'gemara halacha k'moiser. Unless the Gemara says b'feish that halacha is like him. Lo yistamchinen apsak t'masizin. You cannot rely on the Mishnah's psak. Ava b'halachas b'divrei ha'amoraim v'adai samchinan. If the Amoraim say halacha k'divrei Rabbi Yehuda, then you could for sure rely on it. The kivan shepaskum v'kasvum Ravashi v'Ravina, since Ravashi and Ravina wrote it down in the Gemara, shehem soifai ra, they're the end of psak halacha, v'adai aleihem samchinan. We rely on them. Yuhin sham sheherich. Uverashi needed Avzayin and base. Dibra Maschel Hakamash.
So the Bavli is the final clarity, that means?
The Bavli is the final psak, yeah.
So why were the Midrashim written then?
The Midrashim are written to learn from, to learn lessons from, like to learn
because there are halachic Midrashim as well.
Yeah, the Sifra and the Sifri.
And even more, there are some other ones too which are all halachic rather than agadic.
But it just means that the material is halachic. It doesn't mean that you can derive a final psak from it.
That's a support to having learned Bavli.
Right. If you want to bring proof from them to what the Bavli means about something, then you could bring from them.
I see.
Okay. Uverashi needed Avzayin and base Dimaschal Kamashpo and Pirish to Ein Lameidim Halachim Mipi Mishnah Ubraisa Sheshnuya Bohem Halacha Kaploini. Again, the same thing as the Rashbam. You can't learn from a Mishnah Ubraisa. Shal Amoraim Lachroim Diktaku B'Tayim Etanoim. The Amoraim that were at the end, Rabbi and Ravashi, they were careful. They understood what the Tanoim meant. V'hamidu halacha al burya, and they came out with a conclusion. Yuyin sham sherich. V'ayin b'tshuvas Ridvaz Chil Gimel Siman Tov Reish Mem Zayin. V'im kein kiven sha'asugi b'gemara she'achlitu bo Amoraim doichem af ma shekasvu Tanoim. Since when the Amoraim say something, it even takes precedence over the Tanoim. So kol shekain over a Havamina, right? Even if the Tanoim say halacha ke Rabbi Kiva, and there's no chazar in there, they never change their mind, you still don't follow it. The Amoraim still win.
Yeah, because the Shloim are not disputed at all in the Bavli.
Right.
There's no one who argues that sorry for there's something else to them.
So here, for sure, when it's a story that happened in the time of the Tanaim, Ben Koziva story, right? Rabbi Kiva.
Yeah, it was way before Rabbi Ravashi.
So, and it was only a Havamina Bialma. Ulavasayv Chazru. In the end, they changed their mind. They also Maisa, and they actually paskin Fakert that he's not Mashiach. Shekatlu, and they killed him. So you see, clear that there was a rejection of the Havamina. So for sure, you can't follow the Havamina against the Betherish Gemara and Erevin. Okay, Umasha Kosev Rambam Zal.
Yeah, that proves my point that Bavli takes precedence over Yerushalmi. Because Bavli was written by Ravina Ravashi, who are the finalized poskim.
Umasha Kosev Rambam Zal Shadimu Alav Kol Chachmei Doyer Shu Mashiach. Stam is going into a side point now. How does the Rambam know that everybody thought he was Mashiach? Maybe it was only Rabbi Kiva. And secondly, why did the Rambam even need to say that? So he says the Rambam needed to say it. He had to bring a raya. The Rambam is trying to bring a raya there that you don't have to have a miracle. That Moshiach doesn't have to perform any miracles. So in order to bring that raya, the Rambam needed to say that everybody held like that. If it would have been just Rabbi Kiva, it wouldn't have been enough. Why? From Rabbi Kiva alone, you wouldn't bring a raya. Because the halach is like Rabbi Kiva against one other Tana, but not against all the other Tanaim. Kamasha Kosev Kesem Mishnah Perik Dal Milchas Tefillin, Perik Yud Beis Milchas Trumas. That's the klal that we don't follow Rabbi Kiva against everybody else. So therefore, if everybody else would have been against him, then he wouldn't bring a raya from Rabbi Kiva. Therefore, the Rambam had to say that everyone else agreed with Rabbi Kiva originally. The question is where the Rambam get it from. Did Rabbi
Yochanan argue with him?
Rabbi Yochanan ben Terasa.
And he told them, when grass grows on your chin, that's when Mashiach will come. Meaning, it's not happening in the wild.
Right, exactly. So that's what he's about to say. We don't find the other Chacham saying anything. The only thing we do find is B'medrash Eicha Perek Beis, B'pasuk Bila Hashem, Mevur She'amar Le Rabbi Yochanan ben Terasa. Akiva, Ya'alu Asavim Bilchayecha V'adayin Mashiach Lo Yibah. He said the grass will grow on your chin before Mashiach comes.
What kind of muscle is this? Why dafka grass or chin, not any other muscle? What's the meaning of grass or chin dafka? No pshat. I'm asking you.
I don't know.
So you could have said, something else. Flowers grow on your head. I
don't know. It's a good question. Okay, we don't find any opinion from the other chachamim, right? But what is the source of the Rambam? Could be from the Gemara in Perek Chelik, as I told you before, right? Daf Tzadik Gimel, the Ben Koziva Amar Lahu Rabbanan Anna Mashiach. Ben Koziva claimed that he was Mashiach. So Amruleh, but Mashiach Ksiv Demarach V'dain. That regarding Mashiach, the pasuk says V'haricha B'yiras Hashem, that you could paskin based on his smell. Nechzei Anani Marach V'dain. Let's take a look and see if you can do that. Kivan de Roj the Loy Marach V'dain Katlu. And when they saw that he couldn't do it, they killed him. The Rambam learned from the Havamina of this Gemara that from the fact that they said, let's see, they had to do the test. They said only because they saw that he couldn't smell and paskin, but only based on that proof. That's why they rejected him. That before they saw that proof, they thought that he could be Mashiach. He doesn't have to do any other miracles. And this thing, by the way, the Rebbe said before that this thing about paskin based on smell is not a miracle. It's not, it doesn't count. It is a miracle, but it's not the miracle that we're talking about.
You're not making any changes in nature. You're acting wonders to yourself. But again, the Rambam was like the person himself.
It's like Nevuah, right? The Mashiach is going to be a Navi, right? So just like he could be a Navi, he could be Moarech V'dain. But
because you can't say Mashiach will be like any ordinary person. That's impossible. The Mashiach will bring about something above this world.
Okay, the Aval be'emes efsher she'amru nisayin zeh shel Moarech V'dain shehu bar yoiser levar lifnei olam. However, it could be that this is not a good raya to the Rambam, because it could be that this proof of Moarech V'dain is only the proof that the Gemara mentions because it's so obvious. Everyone could see it. You could test them openly. It's like a litmus test. Everybody could watch. It could be that they had another reason for rejecting him. Maybe they weren't sure about the other reasons. But this was a more clear test. So in other words, he's saying that you can't bring a raya from this that Eliyahu doesn't have to come before Mashiach, because maybe the Chacham weren't sure if Eliyahu has to come. So they didn't bring a raya from that, but they brought a raya from the Morech V'Dain. Ubetoisvis Sukkah Daf Chaf Dal Amud Aleph, Dibur Maskal Rabbi Yehuda, Kosvu Hadaboy Lamem B'Shmaitin Uve'erev and V'Gittin Umruba. There's a sugya over there of Breira. You ever learn the sugya Yesh Breira?
Yes.
So there's a sugya that if someone buys wine from the kusim, who don't take meiser, so he has to take off the meiser.
Take meiser, but kusim we're not even considered sincere gerim. Oh, yeah, for the opinion
originally they originally were sincere gerim, but then they stopped keeping certain things.
Oh yeah, so then it was machlokes amongst the chachamim whether they're still gerim or not.
So halakech yain ben kusim. If someone buys wine from them and he has to take off meiser. Now let's say it's Shabbos and he can't take off meiser. So he says a t'nai. He says, I'm going to be mafresh the meiser tomorrow, but today I'm going to drink the wine. How am I going to do that? Whatever I'll be mafresh tomorrow should be chal today and should be wine, should be meiser now. So he says, let's say 100 lugim, he takes 2 and he says, doesn't take off 2, but he says, the 2 that I take off tomorrow should be truma now, the 10 that I take off for meiser should be meiser now, and the 9 that I take off for meiser sheni should be meiser sheni now. And he's put in the meiser sheni and then he could eat it on Shabbos. Drink it on Shabbos. So that's the shita of Rabbi Meir, but Rabbi Yehuda holds Ein Breira, right? So what's Breira? Breira means you can't determine the past based on the future.
Breira means clarity. In that if you don't say something clearly, if somebody says, I'll be Mekadesh this lady, which whoever comes out of that house first. The machlok is yes Breira, Ein Breira.
But it has nothing to do with how clear he said it. He could say it from today to tomorrow, but it doesn't work because you can't use the future to be mevara. Breira is choosing.
Doesn't Breira mean clarity?
It could mean both, but in this case it means choosing. You can't choose the past based on the future.
Let's see.
So you can't choose which wife to be megarish now based on what you're going to do tomorrow. Same thing, you can't choose which wine is the meister based on what the wine you took off tomorrow.
Whoever comes out of the house first.
Right. So Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says that the time is because of the Leslei Breira. Time of Rabbi Yehuda, mishum de Leslei Breira. Afal gav the Tani Behedim mishum bekiyas Hanoi. Even though in the Mishnah itself it says, in the Brisa itself it says that Rabbi Yehuda says, don't you get worried about the bottle breaking? He's saying to the Chachamim, to Rameir, in other words, who argues with him, why do you permit this guy to drink the wine now based on what he's going to do tomorrow? Maybe he'll never get to do it. Maybe the wine will break and the bottle will break and he won't have any wine tomorrow. And then it comes out that it was Tevel. So, in other words, it sounds like Rabbi Yehuda's reason is because of that, because we're afraid it'll break, not because of Ein Breira. So the Tosfos says the Kavasei Ashkechan Tuva. We find a lot of places in the Gemara that the Gemara doesn't hold that the real reason is the reason that it says, but the Gemara says the real reason is something else. That, in other words, Rabbi Yehuda just said this thing about the bottle breaking to convince his opponents, but really he himself held Ein Breira. Yuyin Sham Shehaviu Lazer Rayas. Tosfos brings a lot of proofs to this. Mikam Mekoyim B'Shas. V'im Kain B'Vada Yesh Loimer Gam Kan. So here also, for our subject with the Ben Koziva, when the Chacham rejected Ben Koziva because of the smell, it could be that they had other reasons for rejecting him too. It says, Gam Kan Shahayan Lohem Gam Time Macherim Yoiser Ikri. Maybe they had more fundamental reasons why Mashiach.
Yeah, like he had no yichus, for example, being Ben David, maybe.
Well, I don't know if that's the reason, but whatever. There could have been other reasons, and namely that what we're talking about here, Eliyahu coming before.
Because the Raya of Sheva can only ride through yichus.
That's true. I don't think they would make such an obvious mistake. If Ben Koziva wasn't even from David, I don't think.
I see.
But there could be other reasons that they determined later that he couldn't be Mashiach. They said, wait a minute, let's check if Eliyahu came, and they made an investigation around the whole world, and nobody saw Eliyahu. Okay, can't be Mashiach. Ukvar Evesi La'el Meharaz, that Rabbi Avram Zakuto.
Who was the Raz?
The Raz was in the time of Christopher Columbus, in the time of Spain.
He lived in Spain?
He lived in Spain, and he's the one who discovered the astrolabe, which is that instrument that you can determine your position in the ocean based on the stars.
What was his name, the Raz?
The Rabbi Avram Zakuto, or Zachus.
He lived in Spain?
In Spain, yeah. And
during the Inquisition, before, after?
Before.
He lived into the Inquisition?
I think so. I think what happened to him was, after the Inquisition, he fled to Portugal, because Portugal didn't have their Inquisition until a few years later. And then he was there during the Inquisition in Portugal. But in Spain, could be even he was killed. I'm not sure what happened to him. It could be. We're going to talk about him more later in the Sefer. But he's the one who gave lessons to Columbus how to navigate in the ocean, and he gave him charts.
Is that true? Which historic documents say this?
Listen, I don't know.
Why would a Rabbi waste his time inventing these things?
Because he wasn't just a Rabbi; he was also a scientist.
Was he like a servant to the Queen? Because Columbus, did what he did on the Queen's orders. So was he some kind of like advisor to Queen Eleanor?
It could be. I can't remember, but it could be.
They were sort of like the Rambam was advisor to the Sultan, for example, in Egypt.
In medicine, right? So in Vayoel Moshe, basically, if you look back in Siman Lamed Tes on page Nun of the Sefer, I'm not going to turn to it now, but the Rebbe brought down this Rabbi Skuto that he says in his Sefer Yuchsin, the whole story of Ben Koziva, and he says that Rabbi Kiva originally thought that he was Mashiach, but he was Chayzer because of the smelling test. So even Rabbi Kiva was among those who changed his mind. It wasn't like Rabbi Kiva held to the very bitter end.
Yeah, and Lubavitch said he held to the very bitter end and tried to think that you could hold who was Mashiach to the very bitter end, even though it's not evident.
Lubavitch has a different voice. They say that here Ben Koziva was killed, so he can't be Mashiach, right?
Yeah, but different arguments.
They say Davka if he got killed, but not if he died.
Yeah, Rabbi Kiva rejected already, even before.
Anyway, Rabbi Kiva also changed his mind. It's brought down in the Sefer Seder Adoros from Rabbi Halpern, Minsk. The Gemara completely omits the whole fact that Rabbi Kiva thought he was Mashiach, right?
The Babli. It's not a part of the Mashiach is.
V'noida masha kosva tois v'shari shoyim shekama brayse shenishnu la'alacha ela sheishmita mashas. That Toisvis and other Rishonim say there are a lot of other brises that were in existence in the old days, and now we don't have them. Why not? Because the Gemara doesn't bring them anywhere, and the reason why is because they're not halachically correct. He says that those who put together the Gemara Ravina Rashi determined everything, and they determined these brises were rejections, and they weren't halacha. They didn't put them in. So it could be that here also the Medrash says that Rabbi Kiva originally thought that he was Mashiach, but it's not brought in the Bavli. Why? Because the Bavli rejected the story. The Bavli brings down the other Shita, the opponents of Rabbi Kiva,
that he wasn't Mashiach.
Right? The Bavli doesn't even bring Rabbi Kiva. You can't prove from Rabbi Kiva something against the Gemara and Erevin. That there it's a Bavli saying a valid thing, a definite thing, and it's even allowed to drink the wine on Shabbos based on this heter, so it's for sure true. Right, that we see that the Rabbanan in Sanhedrin Daf Tzadi Gimel had a suffix about Ben Koziva, and they weren't sure if he was Mashiach. They said, let's test him. So pshita she'ein suffix zeh moitzi midei vadai sugi brura pshuta. You can't use this suffix to make a machlokes against a certain definite sugya in Erevin.
Besides, you know that by Lubavitch, the Gemara Bavli, is outdated and Chassidus is up to date. They wouldn't even care anyhow, because by them, Chassidus, you know. Now,
but the Rambam does bring a raya from the Havamina of Ben Koziva that you can't avoid. He brings a raya that there don't have to be any moifsim.
Because Chacham didn't ask him for one miracle.
They didn't ask him for that.
The same Chacham who wanted to test him did not say split the sea, for example. You know, or
right.
Or that.
So he says, he says, how could the Rambam bring a raya from the Havamina? Maybe in the Chanami they didn't test him to see if he could split the sea, but maybe they could have tested that. They just decided to do the smelling test. That was easier.
There's no open Gemara. Ben David ain't sorry about those nisim.
So the point is like this: since there's no Gemara that says that Ben David tzarich lasos nisim, there's no Gemara that says he has to.
Yeah.
So don't bring a raya. So we could bring a raya from a Gemara that says that they didn't have to. You know, understand? If you don't have a raya against it, then fine, bring a raya. But the Eliyahu thing, where there's a raya against it, that's where he has a problem that you can't bring a raya. He says, "V'gam delu yehei ela safek shenistapku chachamim batchila." Even if it was a safek that they had about Ben Koziva shu Mashiach, al kaponim eino bar she'iyeh hechrich sheyaseh Mashiach moifsim koelu. So it's not for sure that he has to do moifsim. It could be yes, it could be no.
People only think this way just out of their own minds, not on any basis, anyhow.
V'lachein amar she'ein lahalos al adas u'leval b'la machshavos lislois b'yis Mashiach b'moifsim. That's what the Rambam meant. He didn't mean for sure that Mashiach won't have to do moifsim. He just meant that it's a suffix if he'll have to. So,
but if you see, it doesn't mean it's Mashiach necessarily.
Right, and therefore don't be mevalbal people. Don't mix up people with a false Messiah that could make miracles.
Yeah, why would contradict themselves anyhow? And why do they say that Mashiach will make miracles? They're Mashiach. The other thing, they made miracles, and that's how he's Mashiach. And more so, just head out with the Chacham rejected Ben Koziva before he was even killed. So we see it's not true to Lubavitch at all.
That we already explained the Rambam's reason, and this was in Siman Mem Vav, I think, and Mem Zayin, Mem Ches, that the Rebbe explained the Rambam Shita is that we don't look at Moifsim so much. The Rambam, he says even by Moshe Rabbeinu they didn't believe in him based on the Moifsim. The Rambam was afraid to base anything on miracles.
The Hashem can do it too. We all know.
Right. There could be tremendous stumbling blocks in fulfilling the Torah, like Yashka, if someone comes along and says the Torah is batal because I made a miracle. So but the Rambam makes sure to say that the B'yis HaMashiach is based on the Mashiach will make everybody fulfill the Torah. Right? That in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam says that the Yidden are going to do Tshuva before the Geula. In order to show, to strengthen his point, the Rambam's point that it's not a definite thing. It's not for sure going to happen that Mashiach will make miracles. Well, for that much he could bring from Ben Koziva. You see, at least from there, that it's not for sure.
But the possibility is still there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's for sure because there are miracles.
So therefore, don't be caught up in it. Don't think about constantly miracles, because it's not something that's for sure going to happen. The Rambam doesn't say don't
make miracles. Period.
Right. He just says don't be ma'al adas that he has to do moifsim. There's a different lashon.
Yeah, because the Zion's common argument that Mashiach doesn't have to make miracles. Like, why then do they themselves claim miracles anyhow? Although it's Maamar dumb to even think these are miracles, because you know what? It has historically happened factually that small armies beat big armies. And they deny that just show how ignorant they really are about reality.
Look in the Rambam inside, just look at the lashon. Don't be ma'al adas. Don't make it occur to your mind that Melech HaMashiach has to do oises u'moifsim.
Sorry, he needs to.
Right. And that's what the Rebbe is saying. He doesn't say al yal al das shel yasem moifsim. It could be he will do, but don't be ma'al adas that he has to. Elakasav, back to here now. Elakasav shaloi lahalos al adas shetzarich lasos ki anachnu lo neda mashi tzarich lasos. We don't know right now what is going to be the requirement for Mashiach. Aval lahavi misham raya al bias Eliyahu, to bring a raya from Ben Koziva that Eliyahu doesn't have to come. Koidem, that before Mashiach, shehu neged amur b'shas, that's against the Gemara Nevin, kasha lahavim. That's shver. That's hard to say. So that can't be, in conclusion, that can't be the source of the Rambam. So we're still stuck looking for a source for the